Right. Welcome to the full council meeting of the 26th of June. Meetings being recorded for publication on the Thatcham Town Council YouTube channel. Before we go into the main agenda, we have a special thing to do, which we only do once every 4 years, which is to present the councillor badges to all the newly elected councillors. It's just the newly elected one. Right. What the easiest way to do this? I'll
It's done.
there we are. Thank you. On to you, sir. Thank you very much.
No, I'm not newly elected. I've got 2 of those already. Thank you.
Thank you for being sustainable.
Leaving it one way now.
Thank you very much. Me with all this.
And for you. Oh,
I know.
I apologize.
I do beg your
for
pardon.
being
There you are.
late. I get stuck in traffic. Got you in the end.
okay. And yes, I mean, welcome once again to all the new councillors. We've all been to a few meetings now. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you,
Madam
Mr.
Clerk.
Mayor. Apologies received from councillors Suzanne Adamantos, Jeremy Cottam, Ian Cottingham, Owen Jeffrey and Simon Pike.
Thank you very much. Councillor
Chair,
Chair.
we do have an apology from Councillor Dillon as well.
Thank you. Any other apologies? Declarations of interest? Excellent. Public question time, Madam Clerk, any questions?
None received.
Thank you very much. Item 4, to read and confirm as accurate the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of May. Do I have praise of that or any
Thank you,
questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Cole. Thank you, councillor Schuhart. All those in favour? Any against? No, excellent. Okay, so moving on, the main item on the agenda really tonight are to receive and approve, to receive and adopt our reports and accounts. And item 5A is to adopt the internal auditors report for 22-23 following an internal audit carried out on the 12th of June. I'd like to introduce to members Mr. Kevin Rose, Director of IAC Audit and Consultancy, who is here to answer any questions. Mr. Rose, did you want to give us a brief summary before we get into?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if I just outlined what the internal auditor does. The Town and Parish Council has 2 auditors. One is an external auditor. In theory, parish council could appoint an external auditor, but it's quite onerous process of doing it. So as far as I'm aware, all parish councils which are subject to external audit use the external auditor who is appointed by SAAA, which is the smaller authorities, and they appoint auditors by region for I think 4-year contracts.
Yes.
Yeah. They have a statutory role, which is obviously to sign off the full annual return when everything's sent to them. But they also act as a statutory body through which an elector could probably raise an objection to the accounts. So their role is different. The internal auditor is employed by the town council, and we report to the town council. So we don't have a public facing role. So a member of the public couldn't ask, well, they can ask us a question, but we have no role in answering any of those questions. If they were to raise any questions, we would refer them to the RFO or the town clerk. The work that we do is prescribed. There's a document, there's a statutory document, which is the council audit regulations, which sets out certain things that we have to check. And then there's another document which is issued by a body called JPAG, which is the joint, changed the name, it used to be the Joint Advisory Group. And they issue something called the Practitioners Guide, and that sets out what's called proper practices, which are a legal requirement, and best practices, which an auditor has to follow. Okay. In terms of the work that we do for this council, we work with a lot of councils, but we actually visit twice a year to complete all the work for the statutory internal audit. So we visited in October, and in October we will normally review the last year's annual return, the approval process, any issues potentially raised by the external auditor, things like the exercise of public rights, publication of statutory documents, setting up a precept. We'll do testing on payments and on income. We also tested the council in its role as a trustee to make sure it was doing what it should have done as a trustee. At the end of the year, what we call the end of year visit, which was the visit we did in June, we will look at the year-end accounting statements and payroll. Those are the two main things that we look at. We look at the year-end accounting statements really as an internal auditor. So we will review them and just check, because obviously I'm an accountant and it helps sometimes. You're not, accountant looks at things you can't help. But we are not responsible for signing the accounting statements. That's the responsibility of the RFO and the council. Obviously, we became aware of anything during our work, as part of our work that impacted on it, we would report those to the council. The other thing that we, as I said, that we look at year end, which is by convention, is payroll. We tend to look at that for two reasons. A few years ago, councils used to, or all employees had to fill statutory declaration, end of year declarations for payroll, and it seems sensible to do the audit after then. The other reason we do it is one of the things we check is the implementation of any pay awards. And I mean, this year was a good instance. The pay award didn't come through until November. Our interim audit was in October. So if we'd have audited in October, we wouldn't have been able to cover the accuracy of the implementation of the pay award, which is why we do it. In terms of the observations that we only raised a couple of observations at the interim audit. There was one technical issue that we raised, which was relating to the trust accounts, because we had an issue in terms of whether the balances were in the trust accounts. I'm not aware of the result of that is. I'll look at that during my next visit. And there was one minor issue about publication of the investment strategy. Okay. In terms of the year end, the main thing really that we experienced some issues were our audit related to payroll. And there were a number of issues raised. But one of the things which is in particular that I'd like to draw people's attention to is the way the council operates its payroll. The council is not registered as an employer with HMRC, which is how we would normally expect things to operate. But the payroll is processed through the Borough Council, the West Berkshire Council. And so all the statutory returns and things we understand are done through West Berkshire. This used to be relatively common a few years ago, but I think now this would be the only council that we audit where that's still in place. Obviously we don't audit all councils. And my understanding is that if you spoke to HMRC, they would tell you that you should be registered as an employer with them. I understand that the West Berkshire have given contrary advice, but it is one of the things I would encourage the council to clarify officially, which I think you'd have to get from HMRC as to whether the council should be registered as the employer. Because the payroll operation is outsourced, some of the controls that you might expect to see in-house were not in place. For example, the council doesn't maintain a listing of its staff, what their current pay scale is, and what their hours of work are. There was one maintained internally, but we weren't sure that that was up to date, and we weren't sure that that council had actually reviewed that. And we would encourage that the council establishes that as a formal list, and that's subject to review. We also did identify one anomaly, which we've asked the council to clarify. I don't know what the result of that has been. Okay, so we haven't raised a negative observation. So we haven't given a negative on the internal audit report, although if you see the summary, there is one flag, which is the operation of the PAYE code, which you can see under G, where it says as non-compliance. But we're not going to raise that as a negative on the signed internal audit report, pending resolution by the council with West Berks as to what the status is. I would say, just as an observation, obviously the finance function, which is quite a large area that we audit, there has been some change with the previous RFO left, and there's been some change in roles. I would say that that's the operation finance has carried on very well through that transition, and I didn't see anything in terms of a decline in standards or procedures as a consequence of that change in staff, which I think was encouraging, because you did have a very well qualified RFO previously, but you're also lucky because the new finance manager is also well qualified as well, so you're very fortunate.
Okay, thank you very much. So you have the report summary there. Just to clarify, normally at full council, we ask councillors to stand when they speak, but I think for item 5, as it's likely to be lots of small comments and questions, we'll just treat it as like a normal committee meeting. So no problem on that score. So does anybody have any comments?
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. Can I just clarify, are you saying that the town council, you get clarification from HMRC on its process and get it confirmed by them that it's appropriate, or are you suggesting we back to West Berkshire and get them to double check?
No,
Which one?
You're an employer. You should check with HMRC.
Okay, and that should be done ASAP and reasonable.
Well, obviously we'll revisit this a year from now, which will be in June next year. But I think if it's convenient, the sooner the better.
Would that limit the council, once the council accepts that advice that they should be, that we can still franchise that work out effectively?
Yeah, most councils will use outsourced payroll providers. Not all, but most will. And it may be that West Berks can continue to do that. I am aware of some district councils in other areas who've had problems because their systems won't cope with more than one PAYE code, which is why they've discouraged the town councils, etc., from going down that road. But it may be that they can deal with it, but you'll have to have that conversation with them. If they can't, there's a lot of other people who could employ it.
And as a brand new member of the council, item 5B1, page 6, on your evaluation, your totals for the asset list by group and name.
Yeah.
Page 6.
Yeah. I can clarify that.
Are you okay with that? Okay, I was going to say
That's just a little bit further. Sorry, Mike.
that's fine if you're happy to take it. Yeah.
The current value of 4.4.
Yeah.
And the insurance value of 8.8.
Yeah.
Is the 8.8 the cost to rebuild and replace? How because there's a large disparity between the two.
Yeah, unfortunately, the valuation, to be honest, the valuation use of an asset that you see in any set of accounts is unlikely to be a sale value or insurance value or value in use. It will be based on an accounting convention. Typically, it's based on historic cost. A training company will normally apply depreciation to that, which is to apply the cost of that acquisition against the period of time you're going to get a benefit, and that's so that they can work out a profit. Town and parish councils at the moment aren't profit-making entities, or aren't set up to be profit-making entities. So the main issue is that the council is custodian of those assets and is accountable to the electorate as to their stewardship of those assets. So the convention is that town councils will carry an asset at cost until disposal. They won't depreciate it, but so you'll have, and if an asset is donated to the council, for example, by a transfer, it's quite common to see those assets valued at £1 as a nominal value. So the value that you'll see in the asset register really doesn't relate either to insurance value, a build value, or even sales value. It's a purely, if you like, an accounting value.
That explains that column.
Yeah.
The insurance value.
The insurance value is a matter for the clerk. It's how the insurers value it. That's not a matter for the auditor. We will only, the internal auditor, we will check that the council's major assets are covered under the council's insurance policy. And we will also ask, when's the last time you had them valued for insurance purposes?
Yeah. Okay. And would we know what? Fantastic.
So we have a 3-year policy with our insurance provider, which renewed last year. So everything was revalued just in advance of that.
Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent. Do you have any other points or questions for Mr. Rose? Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time. We need to adopt the accounts, I believe. For that.
So proposal.
Seconder from Councillor McCann. All those in favour, please. Excellent. Thank you. None against. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you for your time. Much appreciate it. Okay, so moving on to item B, Town Council accounts for 22 to 23 to receive and approve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we look at item B, 1 and 2 in unison, so the information that's provided in item 1 is for you to understand the figures that are then populated into the annual return, which is item 2. So all of this is generated within our accounts package. So the information that's generated for 1 will automatically populate the annual return. So I wonder, Mr. Mayor, whether the best thing is to go through each item and answer any questions that might arise.
Absolutely, yeah, that's the way to do it. Let's get that up on screen.
Balance sheet. Mr. Mayor, if I may, I was asked a question prior to the meeting this evening as to why the asset register isn't on the balance sheet and nor the long-term loans. And it comes down to one of the quirks of local councils and how they operate. And I have had that clarified by the internal auditor when he arrived this evening, that they aren't included on the balance sheet of town and parish councils. And I will get him to put that in writing for us, the explanation as to why. But it's to do with that, because we don't depreciate over periods of time like companies do.
Yeah.
I will get that clarified in writing.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, it's sometimes a bit of a learning curve as council accounts do work in a very different way from commercial accounts. Certainly took me a while to get my head around a lot of it. Councillor Cole.
If it's any consolation to anyone, Mr. Mayor, it took me 2 years.
So there's no hope for the rest of us, I suspect. But, yeah, sorry,
the figures in the first column, for some reason it's chopped off the years, but the first column on the left-hand side is 31st of March 2022. And then the column on the right-hand side is 31st March 2023.
Right. Councillor Stevenson.
Can I, as a newly re-elected councillor with a big gap, ask about the line on the first page which mentions the Priory? Is there any chance of anyone filling me in on what has happened about the Priory, please? Why it's down as whatever it is?
Councillor Cole.
As chair of the appropriate committee that was dealing with the Priory. Just by way of background, Councillor Stevenson was chair of Thatcham Vision.
Yes.
Or at the time when the Priory was purchased, for those again new to the council on the request of and instigation of Thatcham Vision, which was a process that was gone through 10, 12 years ago, which threw up all sorts of excellent suggestions and which were taken forward by working parties. The council purchased from West Berkshire Council a building called the Priory, which, if you look at the car park and into the car park, is a building sort of just to the left behind a wall, the other boundary wall being against the church and the other one in Church Lane. The council renovated this property. The intention was to maintain this property, to rent this property out. There was surplus accommodation within the Priory and a building outside called the Hub. Again, the intention was to rent that accommodation out, which would then have generated income to repay the loan for the purchase of the property. Purchase was 400,000. Renovation of the property. Whilst that work was being carried out, the complexion of this council changed, and the new administration decided they were not going to follow the plan from the previous council, and sought to sell the Priory for substantially less than the purchase price plus what was being borrowed to renovate. When that fell through, then the decision was made to rent it out, and it is currently being rented out to a mental health charity as a home for people who are between an institution and care in the community. So people who require additional support. The rental income for that actually is about the same rental income as we were anticipating from this place, plus the Hub, plus the remainder of the Priory. So that is on a 25-35 year lease, something like that. And the income for that is being received.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Very useful background. Do we have any other comments?
Mayor, I just wonder whether again it might assist because apologies because the assets of the council have reduced with all the liquid assets, apologies, current assets of the council have reduced by about £80,000. The reason for that being that the council decided to spend some of the reserves on such things as disabled play equipment, some repairs, some improvements to the cemetery, and numerous other items during the year. So it's not suddenly that £80,000 has disappeared for absolutely no reason. It was actually spent on improvements to the town for the benefit of our residents.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification. Okay, where's that next?
So next is the.
Fixed asset register. Shout if you have any questions. Councillor McCann.
Yeah, I believe at a recent council meeting, we asked what property did we own, and as a new member, I'm finding it increasingly confusing to know. We own a bit of this, so-and-so's got a bit of that, we own it, they run it, so-and-so, and I actually find it quite confusing. Reading this, working out what assets is actually ours, who manages it. I think it might be helpful perhaps for some of the newer members that we can actually maybe find some space in the diary or these meetings where we can actually a bit more structure behind this, because I'm sure the officers of the council know exactly what's where and who's got what, but as the decision makers of what we want to do and how we want to do it, I think maybe at least a bit of refreshment on how that's actually working, because I cannot really translate half of this lot to an agenda of historic buildings and listings that we spoke about the other evening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, understood. Yes, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if it might be helpful if we, obviously it's a massive information here, including, you know, the mayor's chain, which as it is, it's not something we're going to do a lot about. I wonder if we might, through you, Mr. Mayor, ask the clerk if you might be able to get prepared a list of what we own freehold, what we own leasehold, what we occupy,
What we manage. Yeah.
And what, as Councillor McCann says, we own but lease out to other people, such as the cricket field, etc. Absolutely, if that might clarify or get the information which is. I agree. It takes a long time.
Because thank you, Councillor Cole. Yeah, I mean, the question came up at the events committee the other day, and I think there was discussion around local heritage assets as well. And I think, you know, the key thing initially for councillors is things that really belong to us, or where we have a shared ownership. There's things like as well. So if we could get that put into a form that's easy to digest, that would be very helpful, I would think. Councillor McCann.
Thank you. I believe a list was circulated by the clerk, the officers, but it actually included things that were West Berkshire as well.
Yeah.
I really only want to know what ours, if possible. And then, so ours, theirs, but we manage. Keep it a simple list. I don't want to overly complicate the work, because as you can see, it could get quite messy if we're not too careful.
As simple as it can be, though. We appreciate
That would be lovely.
Not simple. But yeah, I mean, if we can get that in a digestible form, that would be very helpful, I think, certainly for me and all the councillors. Any other point? Yes, councillor Stephen.
Can I ask if you could point me towards a line that mentions CCTV?
Yeah.
Yes.
Page 6. Yeah, 1-3.
Yeah,
Where are you finding it?
Page 6. being one- yeah, the page,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
and the
Yeah.
page back again. And it's on D, EO13, about 3 lines down, another infrastructure verification. 16,952 original, 21,000 insurance cost.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. A large number on bus shelters there as well.
Is that the number of?
Well, no, I mean,
Is
the
that it?
overall value.
Is that, sorry, the bracket bit?
Oh, in the brackets, so I guess 14 is right, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, councillor.
Yeah, so I've seen that, I mean, some good news of the original cost to the current value I see on all the buildings. Is that well, appreciation, I suppose, on previous, you know, when you buy a building, such as Priory, it's gone up in cost. I'm presuming that's when it was purchased, 400,000, and it's at now 1 million. And other buildings, you know, the Lincoat School. Wow, that's pretty big high. And is that just through obviously years and years of price of building, I'm guessing?
Councillor Cole.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but this is an anomaly of local authority finance. You mentioned the Priory. The original cost of the Priory was £400,000. That's what goes in an original cost.
Yeah.
This council then spent money on renovating the Priory. That doesn't go on the original cost. But it means that the Priory, which I think has got insurance into the millions, therefore you could realistically say that's probably what it's worth, actually is still shown in the accounts of the council as essentially what it cost plus the renovation costs. It is just a weirdness of local authority finance, which, as I say, took me 2 years to comprehend.
Okay, thank you.
Just
Yes,
to supplement
Madam
what councillor Cole has said there, specifically with the Priory, the insurance evaluation is based also on the work that the charity has done to it, which was quite extensive refurbishment when taking on the lease.
Of course. Thank you for that. Okay. Moving on to
Expenditure.
income and expenditure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, the bulk of the council's income comes from council tax. Is that what's captured in corporate management? Because there's nothing in here that sort of says council tax, and I'm just making that assumption.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, and also, am I right in thinking as well that the annual precept increase, the cap that applies to the district council, that doesn't apply to town council or parish council?
Doesn't.
No.
Doesn't apply. So in theory, we can put the precept up by as much as we want.
Anything else on income and expenditure? So if there's nothing else there, moving on to general and earmarked reserves, which you find on the other sheet, I believe. Anything you draw attention to?
No, it's the
Okay, councillor McCann.
Right, thank you. Can I just clarify, were all earmarked reserves allocated in this row spent to date? Or is there still stuff coming through the system?
Sorry.
It's a mechanical show. The general purpose of the earmark reserves, Miss Mary, is against future expenditure. So, for example, we are aware that we have committed as a council £30,000 towards the remaining flood alleviation works at Hennick and soon to be on the memorial field, contentious issue. So we have basically allocated that £30,000 out of reserves to a specific reserve specifically for that purpose. So those earmarked reserves will be spent, but over a period of some years.
Okay, answer your question.
I can do a detailed one if
Thank you.
Will that help? Or?
Indeed it does, Chair. Again, only because we're, again, it's such a new council that some of us are getting up to speed, is what we don't want to happen, which I think nearly happened the other evening, is people have made a decision 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months ago that then come rolling up now. And then we go, hold on a minute, and then we end up reinventing the wheel again and re-asking the same old questions again. And I was just trying to work out how much of what is in this current right-hand list is actually being delivered, how much is halfway through, how much is, because if we did everything on this list, you'll have done a lot of work this year, if you see what I'm saying, and indeed last year. I was just trying to quantify it. That was really all. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Mayor, I can add a little more to that. So if on the right-hand side of the column, the sheet, sorry, the 3 columns, the first of them, analysis of spend, that is everything that has been funded last financial year, done, finished. The work analysis of committed means that it's been agreed by council but hasn't yet been delivered or hasn't yet been invoiced.
Right.
And the end one proposed is still being thought about, no decisions yet made.
Ta-da. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, any other points on reserves? So move on to review of internal controls.
A little bit of background. So the review of internal controls is something that we have to do annually. This document also comes into the annual return. So all of these questions that you see on this document, for example, item 1 here, have put in place arrangements for effective financial management. The centre column is officers' explanation of how we have done that. And the council will agree that we, by doing what we have said we've done, we have met that objective. Then needs positive yes ticks on page 4 of the annual return. So we can go through these now, but this will create this response in the annual return.
Okay.
Because you'll notice that these questions are the same as these questions.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I'm happy to answer any questions on our justifications.
Have any queries? Is that clear to everyone? Happy with the. If so, then we'll move on to part two. Annual return for the year ended 31st of March, annual governance.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, I thought we were taking the annual governance insurance statements one by one, not whole block. Do you mind if we
Yeah, absolutely.
went through them just so we can ask any questions on the individual sections, if that's, if you're agreeable?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything on question one then? Yeah.
Just not a question, Mr. Mayor, just to say, this is part of what we rely on the internal auditor to do. And we have already had the internal auditor's assurance on the transfer or the handover from one financial officer to the other. We do have an accountant as the finance manager within the council. The investments are part of are decided upon by an investment working party within the council's policy. So if it's any assurance to councillors as chair of F&GP, I am satisfied that section 1 is covered by those various items.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Cole. If you're satisfied, I'm satisfied. So part 2 on there. There. Okay. So that brings us to the end of Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, can I express my total ignorance as to what is a soldo prepayment card?
It basically replaces our petty cash. So rather than keeping a cash supply here, we have a prepayment card that's automatically credited from our main account, and we use that for any purchases, both online or in person. So it's basically our petty cash.
All amounts.
Yes. Thank you.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you.
On the second, yeah.
I'm sorry, it's not a number, but it's balance per bank statement. 31st/3/23. Again, it's purely so I can get my head around this. Is there a specific reasons why we have 4 or 5 different banks? I mean, I agree with spreading the money. We don't want to go to Iceland. I completely get that. But is there a process of what's the sort of reason behind that? That's okay.
I defer to the RFO's considerable.
Okay, so we have 2 main working accounts with NatWest.
Yeah.
One is payment of all the bills and that sort of thing, and where income comes into. And then we have what we call the clerk's account, because payments from the imprest account require committee approval first. That's the reports that go to each monthly committee meeting. We have a clerk's account for things like returning hall deposits, those things that we need to react to quickly. And there are limits within financial regs against that. So that's expenditure that I can approve within guidelines. We have 4 investment accounts, which is where the minimum reserve of 220,000, but it's actually slightly more than that, is spread over 4 different investment accounts, just for the security of spreading a large sum of deposit. And then we have the CCLA account, which is where, because we receive our precept in two 6-monthly payments, rather than that just sitting in the interest account, not earning a great deal of interest, it goes into a CCLA account where we can dip in and out of it as we need to keep the interest account functioning adequately, and we earn a little bit more interest on that. Have we got any more accounts, Councillor?
Just to add to CCLA, CCLA is an organisation which exists to accept deposits from local authorities, the LA being local authorities. In answer to the sort of point, we've never invested anything with such as ING in Iceland. The policy that we have for investment was originally set up 8 years ago, ish, and was designed purely and simply, as the clerk said, to spread the risk. So at the time, the minimum reserve was 200,000, and we set up 4 different accounts with 50,000 each. It was for financial institutions with a AAA Fitch rating. Fitch is a reference agency. Councillor Pemberton probably knows more than I do about them. That was amended. We now have a deposit with Newbury Building Society, which, because it's a mutual society, does not have a Fitch rating. But if Newbury Building Society goes down the pan locally, then there's also that we're in, rather than 50,000 also that we have invested with it. I have to say that policy is now showing its age, because a local authority, a town council, doesn't appear to have any status within the banking industry. So we're neither fish nor fowl nor good red herring, because we're not a limited liability partnership. We're not a limited company. We're not a sole trader. Some banks it blows their mind as to the fact that we exist as what we do. So we can't place everything that we want to with necessarily the nth degree best interest rate at any one time when it comes up for deposit. But if you get the nth degree interest rate and you're getting 9 or 10%, you can pretty much be certain there's something wrong with the organisation anyway. We balance risk along with. But one of the things that the clerk and I will be bringing to F&GP and therefore then to full council is actually a revamp of the policy and the investment, the investment policy that we do have, so that the new council can look at that and see whether it's fit for purpose.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That's extremely clear and interesting information. Would the clerk and yourself as leader, and of course the council, recently have a 7-strategy environmental action plan, and I would be grateful if this council would consider it's the environmental part of that investment strategy, so that we don't just say we're doing stuff, we're making our money work green as well as talking green. It may not have a great effect on the percentages, but I think if we have that as part of our strategy for investment, that we're investing in green products, green services, green things, then I think that would definitely feeds into the council's overall strategy. But again, this is more about details for later, I suppose.
No, that's a very fair point, I think.
Thank you very much.
Something I'm sure Clark will make a note of. Yes, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. Mr. Baird, did I hear the clerk correctly? She said that we have our precept delivered to us every 6 months by West Berkshire Council, who have been receiving my payments monthly. So they hold on to my payment for 6 months before they give it to you. Of course. And everybody else in Thatcham. And I'm shocked to hear that.
National thing is not exclusive to West Berkshire, if that's how it happens. So you just say we have to accept it.
Shocking though it is, councillor Stevenson.
Can I just ask the clerk, isn't it the other way round? They give us the precept in April and October, I believe, so they actually might give us the precept money.
Well, good on them. Good on them. Well done.
I think that's the case. Clerk will correct me.
It's a
Split
good
the
point.
difference. We get it in about May, June.
Okay.
So it seems equitable.
Equitable seems a good word.
Councillor Stevenson cannot demand interest on the money
Thank you. Okay, so we reached the end of part B, haven't we? So we need to vote on approval for part B.
Are we all questions for Mr. Mayor? Oh, fine.
I think we're
On
still
which one,
going
sorry?
through,
Okay.
we're still going to be doing review.
Sorry,
General control.
we reached the end of that part. We have a on that. Councillor Cox.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I wonder again for the benefit of everyone, whether the clerk might be able to explain what a general power of competence is and what it encompasses and what it enables us to do.
Thank you. So councillors may recall that at the last meeting reconfirming that we are eligible to use the general power of competence. It is a power that was brought in the Localism Act of 2011, and it basically allows councils to do anything an individual can do. Every decision the council makes is supported by a piece of legislation. This gives eligible councils, which is at least 2/3 are elected members, a qualified clerk. That's the two criteria, and you have to confirm it every election year. So as long as your council is qualified and council has adopted that power, you are free to use it for that 4-year term. Even if the clerk changes and they're not qualified, or you drop below the 2/3 elected members, it's relevant at the time of confirming your eligibility. So it is a bit of a power to do far more, but it has to be obviously lawful, and to think about, could a chap in the street still do this, and then we would be able to do it as well. That's not a very good explanation, sorry, Mr. Mayor, but it's a broader power that the council can use.
Councillor Stevenson.
Sorry, I'm asking too many questions. On page 3, we have a paragraph about loans and long-term liabilities, and it states that we have 3 public works loans at the moment. As it's the public works, what is the LB? Public Works Loan Board. As it's from them, are we not subject to these changes in interest rates, which are seriously affecting ordinary folk out there? Are we affected by these as well?
Councillor Cole.
All of our borrowings are on fixed rate.
Good.
So no, we are not subject to any variances. It's 25-year fixed rate money, so there is nothing coming up. There's no sort of cliff that we're about to hit with the fixed rate ending. That is the fixed rate until the end of the term. And I think the first loan that we have now has 12 years to run on it.
Thank you very much.
That's good to hear.
Yep.
We get to question 5.
Councillor with that when we go on to this one. Just be yes for each box.
Okay. Thank you.
So if we- Yes, that's the next. So if you just read out the question and then it's agree yes.
Okay.
To each one.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Can I just clarify point 7 on the annual governance and assurance statement? Obviously, within that matters raised by the internal audit, we will be taking forward the question of the payroll and advice from HMRC. So that's a sort of, have done everything up to date, but there's now something which has been identified, which we will take forward, I presume.
Right, indeed. Yeah. Don't know that.
Mr. Mayor,
That's just things.
sorry, can I add an extension to that question? I'd really like to know if Newbury Town Council is being paid the same way by West Berkshire Council and Hungerford, and who else?
It is a good point.
You know, or is it just Thatcham Town Council? And because I was a teacher employed by West Berkshire Council and present, and of course, that means that you're being treated in the same way as any other employee. But it did seem strange from Mr. Rose, who said that other councils aren't treated that way.
Is there any reason why we'd be different from Newbury Town or Hungerford?
It will only be a case of if they have chosen to outsource their payroll, and I'm not sure that they do. I certainly don't think Hungerford do. I don't think Newbury outsource. I think they do it in-house. We just happen to use West Berkshire Council as our payroll provider because they do it at very favourable rates. Yes, I'm not sure that the others do.
Thank you.
Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. I could well be wrong, but it's possible that Newbury Town Council don't pay an allowance. I don't know what Hungerford do, but that may not be an issue insofar as councillors don't get an allowance in the same way that, say, Thatcham Town councillors do.
No, but we're talking about staff.
Yeah,
Our staff are employed by West Berkshire Council, and HMRC has suggested otherwise they should be employed by Thatcham Town Council. So it's not the councillor allowances.
We're employed by Thatcham Town Council, but our payroll is done by West Berkshire Council, which is why the internal auditor has said we need our own payroll reference number from
So it's only effectively like who it's outsourced to, or that there's potentially a conflict there, I suppose, with the Sparks arrangement. Okay, so I need to read out, and then we vote on each one. Okay. So I mean, do we want to go through part 1 question by question, or are we happy to vote on those on? Okay.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, there is a gap on page 2 that needs filling now that we've had the
That's both.
Yes.
on page 2, section 2.
Yeah.
Guidance note.
It's all about. If council does approve, then it goes off to the external auditor.
Okay,
You have done it.
Yes.
yes. So if everyone's happy with that, then we'll tick the relevant box and
That's a yes.
see the show of hands on that. don't we?
I was not on that one.
Not on that one, okay.
And then that was the internal auditors report. Either explains it. And then this is the council just needs to, yes, we agree with each of them.
Okay. So we want to do all those individually. Yeah. So I think we need a show of hands on each of these then. We put in place arrangements for effective financial management during the year and for the preparation of the accounting statements. All those in favour?
Item 1.
Thank you. Are you happy with this, Councillor Cole? Sorry.
Sorry, apologies, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at the wrong page.
We maintained an adequate system of internal control, including measures designed to prevent and detect fraud and corruption, and reviewed its effectiveness. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you. We took all reasonable steps to assure ourselves that there are no matters of actual or potential non-compliance with laws, regulations, and proper practices that could have a significant financial effect on the ability of this authority to conduct its business or manage its finances. Those in favour? Any against? Thank you. We provided proper opportunity during the year for the exercise of electors' rights in accordance with the requirements of the accounts and audit regulations. All those in favour?
Mr. Mayor, would it be helpful just to explain again for the benefit of all of us what those rights are that an elector has?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They are, any elector has the right to come and inspect our accounts. And actually the notice for this year is in your pack because we need to agree that shortly. There's a period of time that they are entitled to do it. So this, the annual return has to be submitted by the 30th of June, and then electors have for this year from the 3rd of July to the 11th of August to come in and inspect those accounts. They have the right to do so. The dates would have been slightly different last year.
Okay. So are we all happy with number 4? Yep. Number 5, we carried out an assessment of the risks facing this authority and took appropriate steps to manage those risks, including the introduction of internal controls and/or external insurance cover where required. Those in favour? Any against? Thank you. 6, we maintained throughout the year an adequate and effective system of internal audit of the accounting records and control systems. Those in favour? Any against? Thank you all. Number 7, we took appropriate action on all matters raised in reports from internal and external audit. Those in favour? Against? Thank you. We considered whether any litigation liabilities. Councillor Cox.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, it just, I apologize, I've interrupted you a bit too early.
No, that's all right.
I'm certainly not aware of any litigation liabilities or commitments, but perhaps we could ask the town clerk to confirm when you have read the rest of the statement, Mr. Mayor. Apologies.
Okay, indeed. All right, then, I shall pause at the end of number 8. We considered whether any litigation liabilities or commitments, events or transaction occurring either during or after the year end have a financial impact on this authority, and where appropriate, have included them in the accounting statements. Madam Clerk, do we have any litigation pending?
Mr. Mayor, as the review of internal control document specifies none identified.
Thank you very much. All those in favour, therefore? Thank you. Any against? Super. And number 9, trust funds, including charitable. In our capacity as the sole managing trustee, we discharged our accountability responsibilities for the funds, assets, including financial reporting, and if required, independent examination or audit. All those. Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah.
So the town council is the sole trustee of Turnfield's Recreation Ground Charity, and their land is Turnfield's play area, which is on the corner of the Moors and the A4 opposite A plan. This Jubilee Sensory Garden out the front here. This was a bit of a land swap many years ago. So the trust council will be called together 2 or 3 times a year for trust business, charity business. And that's what this then refers to.
Okay. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah. So all those in favour of that one? Any against? Okay. Thank you very much. So I think we can find that one.
Thank you. And then
What is that? Yes.
I think it's the actual annual return. Are happy with these figures? That's
Okay. We don't read the figures out, do we?
no.
Okay.
So these are taken from these documents that we
Super. Okay, so the section 2 accounting statement, if just review those, and if there are any questions on those. Otherwise, we'll confirm these accounting statements were approved by this authority. Any more questions at this point? Those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Excellent. Oh, that one's
No. When the external auditor reviewed it.
okay, super. Does that take us to part C of John? Part C, to confirm that the period of exercise of public rights shall be the 3rd of July 2003 to the 11th of August 2023, and the notice shall be published on the Town Council's website and on notice boards at council offices and in the Broadway. Anybody have any questions on that? Are we happy with that? Have a show of hands on that then, please. Thank you. Any against? Lovely. Thank you very much.
For another year.
Thank you. Yes, but glad we don't do that at each full council meeting. Yes, thank you for going through that in detail. We are obviously responsible to the electorate for the financial good running of the council, so it's important to go through that in detail. Okay, then moving on to item 6, Northfield Road Post Office temporary closure. We slid this item in as it came up recently. There were some concerns about it. Councillor Schifferhart, did you want to introduce that for us?
Mr. Mayor. So, as you know, those of us who use the Tesco's post office, I live in pretty much on the state. It's on the border of West Thatcham. It's actually technically on the West border. It's the last one. And going in there and seeing it closed in May, there's been a lot of concerns over local forums and people you're chatting to, you know, why is it shut? You'd like to get to it. You've got the town, you've got the one obviously in Hermitage, you've got the one at Coldash, but it's the one that local residents want to get to. It was closed for a considerable period of time in May, and it's caused some stress in residents in West Thatcham, North East Thatcham, and further afield, who live in the adjoining parishes. I did speak to a member of their staff actually working behind, not Tesco's, he's actually an agency member, very experienced from what he was telling me. You know, he worked for W. Smith's many years. He didn't tell me the agency he was working for. I did say I was from the council and I would be bringing this up to the meeting. He didn't give me a lot of information, but what he did say to me was that he's only an agency staff till at the end of June. And so I said, okay, what was happening next? Because when I asked him a couple of weeks ago, he didn't know. You know, it's obviously the agency. They have had staff leave. I understand, to kind of terms of employment type thing, where because some people working there work for Tesco's. You can clearly see they work for Tesco's, and I know they work for Tesco's, whereas they've got someone in at the moment who's agency that is purely post office. There's a lot of confusion among those who use it as to what will happen from a more permanent position. They want to find out really what's going on. So this is more of a way to address it. That we'd like to see. We need to speak really to Tesco's and post office moving forward, just to keep our residents happy. Yeah.
Thank you, councillor. Yes, thank you for your research work on that. I think it is an item of some concern. I mean, Thatcham West is quite a large area, and there's not very many shops and services within the West area. And I think when they're kind of threatened in the way that this one is, then I understand local residents being very concerned about it. Did anybody else have any comments or anything to add on that? I think it's probably something we just need to keep an eye on and do what we can to put pressure on to keep these facilities open in West Thatcham. Certainly, as banking facilities close, we rely more and more on post office counters to cover for those. Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Again, you're absolutely correct. Local community facilities, we should be putting our full shoulder behind any campaign to sustain and keep open these facilities. I believe that as a town, we could actually write to Tesco's and write to the post office and say we have concerns, and we could emphasise that, you know, we support the opening and the maintaining of these facilities for our residents. Not everyone actually has a bank account. Not everyone deals with cards. You know, there's a large proportion of our community actually deal with cash, who want to do things cash. They may call it the good old fashioned way, but there's less mistakes. And as a town councillor, I think we're absolutely right to get behind any local residents who want to keep and sustain these type of issues. So I believe a letter would not do us any harm in that respect. If that's with the council's wishes, obviously.
Absolutely, yeah, I'd certainly be in favour of maybe writing to Tesco's, I guess, would be the point of contact, and asking them at least to keep us in the loop on what's going on there so that we can help inform local residents. I mean, as you say, not everybody is in favour of online banking and financial services, and it does tend to discriminate against those who aren't when every time the account is closed. So thank you for that. So item 7, approval and adoption of committee minutes. I was asked earlier on whether these are just nodded through or whether people have the opportunity to comment on them. I mean, basically, this is full council, so councillors do have the option to ask questions or to comment on the minutes, even though these activities are delegated to the respective committees. So if anything jumps out of those as we adopt them, please do say. So we'll start with Recreation and Amenities Committee from the the 19th of June. Do we have a proposer for that one or any comments?
We're happy to propose.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you. Councillor Boyd, all those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Thank you very much. Planning and highways from the 23rd of May and the 13th of June. We'll do those together. Do we have a proposer for that one?
If I may, sorry.
Yes. Thank you. Positive.
So with reference to the Planning and Highways Committee meeting that took place on the 23rd of May, it's been recorded that the council objected to planning item number 1, which is the construction of the 9 chalets. I don't know if this can be recorded. I don't know if it's necessarily relevant, but I did actually abstain on that vote. I didn't vote against, purely because I sit on the Eastern Area Planning Committee over at West Berkshire Council. So I didn't want to leave West Berkshire Council open to a potential challenge, not that there should be, of any conflict of interest or me having prejudged that planning application. So I did abstain on the vote. It's not mentioned in here, and I don't know if it needs to be, but that's the position I took on that particular vote at that time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I mean, if there was an abstention on it, then it should be recorded. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay, so I don't think we actually had a proposal on that. Did we have? Were you proposing those or?
I have those, or in second, even.
Either or.
One of each.
I'll propose.
Okay, and we have a second of Councillor McCann. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Excellent. And the events committee meetings minutes from the 12th of June. I'm happy to propose that one from the seconder from Councillor Pemberton. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Lovely. Super. So moving on to item 8, working party appointments to agree terms of reference, appoint members to serve in the 2 working parties listed here, policy review and council strategy review. So I think we have an outline on each of those. That's the.
This one.
We need members.
Really?
What do we need for? Yes. So the policy review working party to review existing and prepare draft policies and other strategic documents for the town council and make recommendations to for council for consideration. This one we don't currently have members for. Do we have any volunteers for this working party? Councillor Cole.
I would like to volunteer, Mr. Mayor. I would also in absentia like to nominate Councillor Pike, whose methodical outlook and modus operandi is invaluable. Sat on.
He's not here.
Nominating someone in absentia does also have that benefit.
I would certainly second that, Councillor Cole. I'm sure Councillor Pike will be more than happy to be on that working party. So we have 2 volunteers. Do we have anybody else? Themselves forward for that.
We do need a minimum range.
The minimum rate. Well, I mean, I'm happy to put myself forward for that one. Then.
I'll be a stand-in if you need to be then.
Fair enough. I think that makes.
Then at least put in me a shout then, aren't I?
Yeah.
So, as long as it's not too early, you can copy the face.
Okay, thank you. And the council strategy review working party at the bottom of the page there, that does have members already nominated for it, the chairman and vice chairman of the standing committees. So I think if everyone's happy with those, I think we just, well, let's have a vote. Why not? Are we happy with that?
Happy.
Anybody against? Perfect. Thank you very much.
Mayor, can I just clarify on that particular working party? That councillor McCann does not have 2 votes, he has them twice.
Gosh.
I'm sure councillor McCann would never take advantage of such a situation.
I think I'm on those two.
But no, but I mean, ISO chair.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, I think that's two.
I think we're good there. Okay, so item 9, appointment to outside bodies to consider the following outside body appointments vacant from. So it's just these few here. We Yeah.
It's subs for the very, her left.
one from there. Okay, so do we have any volunteers for the Kennet Leisure Centre JAC? It doesn't seem to meet very often, if that helps. If at all.
I'm happy to be a sub.
Thank you, councillor Pemberton. And councillor Boyd, thank you very much.
A comment, Mr. Mayor, there is now a new operator for the Kennet Leisure Centre. As you say, the JAC hasn't met for years, despite this council attempting to get something moving at least once every 3 months. But hopefully that will now get some momentum with the new operator.
Thank you, councillor Cole. Do we know if the new operator is aware of the role of the JSC?
And yes, it's told there's a new operator.
Hopefully, West Park. Okay, do we need?
Be fine.
Okay, okay, fine. So moving on to plastic-free Thatcham, West Berkshire Sustainable Communities. We have one vacancy there. Do we have a take of that? Councillor Cam, will you?
If I wanted to start.
I was going to say, so at the event yesterday, I happened to bump into the lady that runs Thatcham Fillable. And she was telling me about the work that they do and the aspirations that she would have, obviously, for the council and Thatcham as a whole to become plastic free. I think what Councillor Shafal was saying is that the plastic free Thatcham will probably work quite well with the Environmental Working Party, which I sit on, been appointed to, so I'm happy to put myself forward.
Combine the 2 roles, that makes perfect sense, yeah.
That's actually, I did exactly the same thing. I had a lovely chat with the person concerned and he convinced me to put my hands into it, but willing hands. So I'm quite happy to be a substitute if necessary. So that would be that would
Welcome to appointing.
Yeah.
if you wish to, I said I would.
Excellent. Yes, I'm sure they would welcome it indeed. Okay. Oh, with that, thank you very much for your time at 8:25. I will close the meeting.